next student and last student is very special for us to introduce because she was, before the master, been with us in the undergraduate program, since the preparatory program to the regular, and now she's in the master. So we know this person very well, and we got to see her growing so much and be part of this family in so many wonderful ways, not just musically, but from a human point, and as a companion, and as a person that always contribute to what is going on around. So I've also been lucky enough to work with her throughout this year to help her shape the presentation she's gonna present now, and I'm very, very, very happy that she was able to really complete her vision, and you'll see it's very special. Please welcome Lesley Mok.
Thank you so much, Marco.
I'm not done. I would like also to acknowledge in our panel, Patrizia Zarate. Welcome, Patrizia, back. And Alicia Candelwell. Thank you, Alicia. Alicia, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for staying through the last presentation. It means a lot to me that you guys are all here. Much of my experience in global the past few years has challenged me to think about the role of an artist as many things, not just as a performer and a composer, but also as an educator, a social activist, and a therapist. And I've been lucky enough to be in an environment that is supportive and encouraging, but without the tremendous courage and leadership of women who have come before me and laid the pathway, the idea of even embracing these roles would have never been possible. For my Culminating project, I wanted to pay tribute to women whose music not only spoke to me personally, but who represented this philosophy in such a prolific and profound way. Their work is part of a legacy that makes it possible for me and other young women like me to pursue what we want to do with fearlessness and without sacrifice. And researching their histories over the past year has made me more confident to pursue what I want to do, and it gives me confidence to keep striving. And I know that those hurdles today aren't as tall for me because of the women who have come before me. So the first suite I wrote is from Mary Lou Williams. Mary Lou Williams rose to prominence in Andy Kirk's band in Kansas City. She then started in Duke Ellington's band, and she was a really prolific arranger and arranged many of his tunes, the most famous being Irving Berlin's Blue Skies. She then started a weekly radio show called the Mary Lou Williams Piano Workshop and began mentoring many younger bebop musicians, including Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk. She then moved back to New York and founded many new venues for jazz performance at a time when there weren't that many full-time jazz venues. She created her own record label and publishing companies and also started the Pittsburgh Jazz Festival. So as you can see, not only was she a very talented musician, she was an entrepreneur and created opportunities for herself at a time when there weren't that many opportunities for women. So when I began composing these suites, I wanted to represent these women not just in an abstract way, but also in a specific way, because all of them had such unique musical identities. So I really wanted to draw from specific musical influences. The first track I'm going to show you is called Baby Man, and it features Buster Williams on bass and Mickey Roker on drums. And the second track that really influenced me, Mary Lou arranged for a gospel choir. And so this is called Saint Martin de Porres.
Saint Martin de Porres, his shepherd staff of dusty broom. Saint Martin de Porres, the poor made a shrine of his tomb.
And this is part of the suite I wrote for Mary Lou Williams called The Clairvoyant's Dream. Mary Lou was said to be born with a veil, and babies that are born with a veil are said to have supernatural powers or psychic powers. So I wanted to name this The Clairvoyant's Dream. And it features Vasilis Kostas, Nassim Alatrash, and Jonathan Swazo. The second suite I wrote was for Abby Lincoln. Abby Lincoln was a singer and a civil rights activist. Together with Max Roach, they created We Insist Freedom Now Suite, which is considered a landmark civil rights recording. She also played many benefit concerts for the NAACP and CORE. And what struck me about Abby was her anger and her ability to convey such passion and demand for equality through her music. As you can see with the ad to the left and the issues that were going on in the 60s when Abby created this music, racial segregation in public spaces and in schools, in bars and restaurants, and then the issues that we still face today, police shootings, Trayvon Martin, a man now who has the power to manipulate public policy towards Islamophobic beliefs. I think those issues are still very relevant today, and those issues need to be talked about. So with the Suite for Abby Lincoln, I wrote a contrafact on one of the ballads she sang on, which is called Straight Ahead. And in it, with the help of my sister, I wanted to create lyrics that drew parallels to these issues. So I wrote it from the perspective of a mother who lost her son to police brutality. And here it features my friend Priya Karlberg on voice.
See the skies are blue like teardrops where mothers cry when the skies turn into midnight. Black looks blue in this moonlight. I think of stranger fruits in the streets, red, white, and blue, for me and you. But where have you gone? Wait here. Red stains on the ground, I fear. And I'm blue in my heart, dear. How do I just quiet whispers, secret sorrows, heavenly angels save me from woes in this darkness. I don't see, dear, colors of red, white, and blue.
The third suite I wrote was for Alice Coltrane. Now, Alice is most famously known as John Coltrane's wife, and they were musical partners, but she had an identity of her own that I think is often overlooked. Alice was a very talented pianist, harpist, and composer, and a lot of her music is spiritually charged. She was influenced by classical Indian music, by religious synth music, and towards the end of her life, she actually only made music for her yoga students to meditate to. And then she completely fell out of music to become a guru. So for me, what's so unique about Alice is that her music charts this process of self-realization and clarity. And so when I was writing this suite, a lot of the music I was listening to were these 20 minutes long improvisations. And that's something that I actually wanted to include in the composition. So this one is called Turiya, which is Alice's Sanskrit name, and it features Chase Morin on piano and synth. The last suite I wrote was for Denise Levertov. Denise Levertov was not a musician. She was a British poet. She was influenced by many of the transcendental poets like Ralph Emerson, Henry Thoreau, William Carlos Williams. And Denise Levertov was a very prolific poet. She wrote many different types of poetry, political poetry. She wrote a book of anti-Vietnam War letters. She wrote a lot of religious poetry about her relationship to God. But what struck me the most was her poems about nature. She spent a lot of time out west in Washington, and she was able to put into words the beauty and grandiose nature of the world and use such beautiful language and simple language to describe it. So for this suite, I wrote it after one of my favorite poems by her called The Secret. And it features Christian Lee on synth, and I'm playing piano. So what was interesting about this one was that a lot of the composition continued into the editing process. We had only the piano and synth recorded in the studio, and then after that, I recorded my own whistles into an iPhone and then played with it in the mixing. I sampled some Tibetan bells and did some things to really recreate the mystery that I felt when I read this poem. So I'd like to thank all the musicians that were involved. A special thank you to Ray Bukris, who engineered and mixed the session. Here are some wonderful pictures from the studio. Cool, and that brings me to the second part of my presentation. For the second part, I decided to create a documentary about education in music. I think in Global, we are so lucky to be surrounded by so many brilliant artists that aren't just great performers. They really are great educators, and to me have revolutionized the way jazz is being taught. So I thought that this is a golden opportunity to interview some of my heroes. Some questions I asked them included, how has the way you have been taught influenced the way you teach now? Can you teach creativity? How do you measure if a lesson is successful? And if it's not, whose responsibility is it? How do you evaluate your own work? How important is mentorship in jazz education today? Is there a difference between teaching someone and mentoring someone? And when do you decide to take that step? What are the general challenges of jazz education as an institution? So these are just a few of the questions I asked to help guide the interview. And now,
My dad told me that there's no bad students, there are only bad teachers. Everybody was designed to learn in a specific way. There was a process to every person. And we, as a mentor, as a teacher, we must find those things that excite the learning experience. You have to actually learn what he does well, what he needs to work on it, and then create a curriculum that will enhance that experience so he can actually improve. It's not really set in stone. I have had students that need to balance their learning process. In other words, they need more experience than the actual theory of what they do. And vice versa. Some guys advance a lot with the experiential part, but then in order to move forward, they need a little more content, more information. So there's a balance there. And all the students are different.
I think my early teachers shamed me about the basics. It was one aspect of what some of us call old-fashioned teaching or old school teaching or the old ways. Using shame is a powerful weapon because when you're first beginning an instrument, it's so difficult because it feels like you're being punished for, I like music. Oh yeah? Well then do this exercise over and over while it hurts and feels really awkward and you can't do it and it makes you feel incredibly uncoordinated. And you have to do this, it feels like the doldrums, just like what does this got to do with music? And it's hard to stay inspired because you don't sound good, you don't have a good sound, you feel incredibly uncoordinated, awkward, weak. None of these things feel like the power of music, the magic of music. So a teacher who somehow inspires you that this is normal, this is okay, and this is also somehow righteous to do this kind of work, like preparing food or chopping something or cutting something or whittling. It's this monotonous repetition that actually is a good thing, and you have to do it. And there are no shortcuts. And then, of course, because you're young and you're a scamp, and you think you might know better, or you think you're talented, or you think you're beautiful, or you think whatever, you try to look for shortcuts, and you try to get it some other way, and you try to sneak it past the teacher or sneak it past the process. And then the teacher beats you down with shame. I told you not to skip the basics. I told you just have to do it like this. You have to listen to me. Otherwise, you're going to keep paying me, and I'm just going to keep repeating myself. Then you go home and you try to sneak again, and it's just over and over and over, until you just get so sick of the hot feeling of shame that you finally just do the work to get it over with. And then you do get to the next level, and you see that it works.
I try to create, in the groups that we coach, a situation that's more like serious and more of a professional thing, where people write music, they arrange music, and I try to get them to think about the things that I learned from what I had to deal with, like learning how to deal with older composers, learning how to deal with young composers who didn't really quite know what they wanted yet, learning how to deal with singer-songwriters who had an interesting idea but didn't know music terminology, who maybe had a really creative thing they were trying to do but couldn't explain to you what it was. Those are the types of things that you learn from being out out playing, and you want to try to recreate that, the focus on those things, you know, knowing when it has to be invitation and when it has to be challenge. Invitation, encouragement, you know, like to build up the student and nurture them and encourage them in ways that they get empowered to where they can take chances and feel like they can do it. And then comes the challenge. Then to really challenge them to be a better version of what they are.
I think it's very important to participate in a lesson and to play, because a lot of times you could speak many words, and but a few notes could really mean more. Playing with Hank Jones and Paul Motion, Charlie Hayden, and Elvin Jones, Ed Blackwell, McCoy Tyner, being a part of their bands and having them embrace my contribution to their music, and then having situations where they played my music, right? That embrace, those are big lessons that I try to translate how it felt to me and how it even happened. I feel responsible to talk about those things.
I think that playing music is the ultimate self-discovery process. I try to point a student in a particular direction that I think they need based on what I'm hearing. I'm constantly looking for the holes in their playing, whether it's in the fundamentals or in a historical context. And I tell them to put on their favorite musicians, play the records, and analyze that, put it on themselves, analyze how they're playing, and try to figure out what's missing. You have to do extensive ear training so that you can listen critically and also hear or imagine the next level of your own playing.
In the beginning of my teaching, I felt maybe I was a little more systematic, like some of those other teachers I had. But I think depending on from case to case, you know, I felt more of a need or an urge for like my private students to have a more personal experience.
Unfortunately, that's all we have the time for today, but I hope to be showing the rest of it to you guys soon. Thanks again to everyone, to Danilo, to Marco, to Terry, all of you guys for being here, and yeah, thank you so much.
Lesley, congratulations. Woo! Wonderful. Who would like to comment first? Patricia, right? Yes.
Thank you. A beautiful presentation. I have a question that I wrote down. I'm trying to figure it out. And I have a comment. So I love the first part. I'd like to know if you've been through the institute for a long time, the pre, the undergrad, the grad. Can you share with us a moment of self-realization for you when you said, I changed because of this?
Yeah. I think a lot of my undergraduate experience, I was dealing with a lot of insecurities, insecurities about actually being able to be a successful woman in music and know that that was something that was possible. So I remember that semester I actually had a tough ensemble experience. It was an octet, so me and 7 other guys, and there was a lot of I think there were many challenges, I think, both musically and personally. But I remember a moment at the end of the semester when Danilo invited me up to say a few words, which I won't repeat now, to the rest of the to the rest of the class. And I think saying something aloud that I was scared of kind of maybe cussed out the rest of the class, but through the but it was something that I think releasing that anger sometimes is healthy. And I think from that moment on, that's when I was able to truly commit to music and to think practically about how I would actually carry out this plan.
And then I wonder if later you ask the teachers about sexism, the women, the very few women in jazz, the very feminism in general, and how they perceive it in the jazz world, and specifically in the classroom too. I wonder if you went to that subject with the teachers later in the video.
In the video, yes, if it naturally happened. Actually, the second part, the documentary was more focused just on education in general. It was not really related to the first part of my presentation. But yes, it did come up in a few of the interviews. That was something that I had to decide whether or not should have been included in the interviews. Through this process, actually, with Marco, we went through many different versions of the project, of the video, and the first version, I kind of, I put myself in the video by kind of using parts of the interview that would fulfill what I believed about education and what I believed about feminism. But I think the important parts, the important thing and the thing that was so special was that I was able to interview people who were so unique. And on many different occasions, they had similar thoughts about education, obviously come from the same lineage. But they also had a few places where they had unique things. So that's something that I also wanted to bring out in some parts of the video. So it was kind of a work in process, but I think we reached a point of clarity by portraying by portraying people and using parts of the interviews that were unique and special.
So in the future, I would encourage you to challenge your teachers with the questions, with difficult questions, not only to show how wonderful they are, but also what values they have regarding certain subjects as this one. Because that's a problem in education too. We don't want to talk about it, everybody's talking about their own thing, but when it comes down to showing what values you have, the teachers need to be challenged too. So I encourage you to keep doing it more and more in, of course, very respectful ways, but more and more.
Thank you.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that always stuck with me that Louis Farrakhan said, and that's that the airwaves are sacred. And now with YouTube and all of the ways that things are reaching people, even more so. So I agree with Patty that we have a responsibility anytime we get to talk, to anybody, to make sure that we're doing as much as we can, because it's such a vast opportunity for so many people to hear the things that are uncomfortable, that are important. Congratulations on a job well done. It's been great getting to know you and watching your development over, my goodness, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years at least, right? And I see such a growth, process. I've seen the growth process in your playing, and not just your playing, but in your writing, in your personality. You look even taller to me now than you did when I first met you, which says something, because physically you may not be any taller, but you might be standing in a way that makes your presence more felt. You know what I mean? So that's a great thing. And congratulations to you and everybody here, at all the students that presented, to have the courage to stand there and talk to people about something that you're passionate about, because that's not an easy thing to do. So I respect everybody that presented, and also to have over the year something that Wayne Shorter talks about called follow through. To be able to follow through with this and hopefully come out the other side a better individual, a better musician, and a better person, which I feel that you have. And just through your tribute to all those amazing women, which the tribute was great because I really felt their energy and their thing in each one of the pieces. So to me, it wasn't like you have a way that you like to write and you inserted that in everything. I really actually felt like you dived deeply into all of those women and brought their energy to your music. So that's a great accomplishment. And through a tribute like that, you're actually you demonstrate the qualities that you admire in them. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, what we're supposed to do, when we tribute somebody. And just watching your own leadership qualities over this past year especially, it's been great. Your clarity, your organizational skills, your leadership, your work ethic. She interviewed me twice because I didn't like the way that the first interview went. And so I saw it. I said, "Oh no, you can't use that." Yeah, she came back, and I kind of insisted on it, but she had the option of not including me or going out of her way to do it again, and I was happy that you chose the second. And the other question I had real quick though, you said 5 teachers in the film, and there were 6.
Am I crazy?
Oh,
You said, I thought I read someplace where it
oh
was
my
5.
gosh, yeah. Thank you. I think I need to go back and change that. But yeah, Danilo, John, you, Joe, Adam, and Ben. So yes, 6. Thank you for catching that.
But overall, I mean, just a job well done. And, you know, it's interesting because there's one thing that you do on the drums that now I feel like I'll recognize you're playing, you know, whenever I hear you. Even though your playing has evolved majorly, but you're developing little things that are identifiable, which is actually not common, you know, for somebody still in their formative years. So congratulations on that. I'll tell you what it is later, but no. But this is one thing. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And it might even be something, because I always tell people, if you find yourself doing something, you know, kind of repetitively, just take it out of your vocabulary for a while, and then it will come back naturally in the right places. I'm sure I probably told you that, but I appreciate the fact that, you know, it's something that you hear and you do, and now it's like, oh, okay, and you know, I can hear it as a part of you, and it's something that I like. So thank you for not necessarily listening to me in that instance. Yeah, but anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. You've done a great job. Congratulations.
Thank you, Terry.
Hi. Congratulations. That was amazing. I've seen the amount of work you've put into this, and you not only came up with one project, but 2. And that's really commendable. And going off of what Terry said about you kind of displaying the same characteristics as these women that you're talking about, I completely agree with that. And thinking about how jazz is constantly reinterpreting history by playing standards in new ways, and how that brings up this idea that as jazz is self-reflexive, so is history, and it's something that can be reinterpreted. And that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about a past that is really unfinished, and you're completing the history for us, which I think is a really powerful tool to go back and say, like, these women were not probably talked about or appreciated as much as the men around them. And you're bringing this education and this history to us, so you're playing a role not only as a musician, but as an educator, which I think is a lot to do with the philosophy of the program. So congratulations on that. As a photographer, I constantly feel this kind of deficit of women photographers that I can look back at and count on to push me forward, and you've kind of taken these voices and made them louder. I took a history of jazz class at an art school, which was interesting to study this music in art school, and the textbook mentioned these women slightly, but totally brushed over them. And you've made them so much more clear to me, which, yeah, it's amazing. I have a question. So the Denise Levertov poem, I really love the music that you came up to go with it. I think that it's a beautiful metaphor for what's happening lyrically in the poem. These 2 girls are reading this poetry that's a different language to them, and maybe they're a little bit naive, and they're finding something in it that the poet herself hasn't seen. And poetry, as opposed to the 3 musicians you're talking about, is a different language already. And then you're on this recording playing the piano, which is a different language for you as a drummer. So if you could talk a little bit about your choice for doing that, and I think that was a really strong choice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because originally that wasn't my plan. Chase actually had been playing all of the recordings on the session. But then I realized that the piece itself wasn't technically demanding, and the degree of specificity I wanted was almost so hard to communicate. And then, so I realized, why not I just play the piece, because it's something that is really personal, and sometimes it's hard to put in writing, even with all the articulation in the world, you know. would be really hard to do. And that's something I tried doing before. I looked at a lot of Morton Feldman scores, a lot of scores that required a lot of specific articulation. But then I just decided, you know, this is something that I can do and that I want to do. So that was a last-minute decision that I'm really happy I went with. And it was my first time recording piano in the studio, so it was very exciting.
I'm glad you did it. I mean, artists are always searching for new mediums, and maybe it's not even about the medium, it's about finding the idea and finding the correct medium in which to express it, even if you're not the most comfortable in it, and really like having that instinct and believing that it's what should be done for like the soul and the feeling of the music. So yeah, great job. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Well, Lesley, congratulations. I am so happy to see everything coming together. The music is absolutely powerful, and I agree with how much you connect certain energy from your inspiration. I would like to talk, you mentioned a little bit about the process of putting together the video. And I want to, first of all, congratulate you on your focus from the beginning, that you had this vision of wanting to create some sort of like, you know, some sort of record of what, you know, great artists do when they're teaching, and put it in a context of, you know, all the things we're talking about, pedagogy. And in a place with, like the Institute, you have a lot of inspiration. And I would like for you, again, to talk a little bit more about the decision of taking yourself out of the picture, because at the end, I think that was a great decision by just asking the right questions, highlighting the difference in the vision of artists that play together and work together. At the end, what it showed to me is that even when they're not coming from the same point of view, all of what they're saying is so related and it's complement itself. And at the end, without you wanted to do that, and I know you didn't want to do that, you really kind of get a great snapshot of what goes on pedagogically at the Institute, which is very great.
Yeah, you know, I think the beauty of all these artists and being able to hear them is that it's exactly what they think, and each one of them has a very clear approach and reason why they teach specifically the way they do. And I would say, even when they didn't totally align their thoughts, I wouldn't say they were different. I would say that they complemented each other, and something that, you know, Danilo would say, you know, Terry would find like another way to say it, and then also mention different things. Right. And Ben would find a different way to then say those things and include his experiences. And some of the video later, you'll hear about some of their backgrounds, and it makes a lot of sense to me why certain teachers teach the way they do, and really how their background has influenced that. So in the end, I pull it to a more grounding point, because I also didn't want to just be like, here are 6 different opinions. I did want to combine it into kind of a vehicle and a thought of what needs to be done, what's next. And I think that's the greatest challenge we have now in jazz education. There aren't enough teachers who really know how to teach or really inspire their students. And I think a lot of students need that. There needs to be more courage from both teachers and students to get on the same team and to help each other and learn from each other.
Congratulations. Lesley Mok. Beautiful.
I have to say something, otherwise I have to say something. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You have a storytelling component amazing. I like to see this in a play. You know, like imagine like a children museum or like a museum. You got me so involved. You were so prepared, And this is strong evidence of research. And the passion that everybody mentioned was amazing. And I agree with you. I wrote, turning jazz into a platform to create another type of museum. This museum that rescue memory. But I'm revisiting memory in a different way, and you're using jazz to create it, and that's a fantastic new idea. You are a great example of discipline. Oh my God. Even the way you stand up now. I always think of you like the movies like Resident Evil and all of that. It's like ready to go for. And even when I saw you at hard times, like really like, you just like, and the punches are coming at you and you're getting beat up and you're feeling what Ben talks about shame. He has a perfect look to say it the way he narrated. You were like, you take your breath and go, I'll be back. You know what I mean? And I always get home, I tell Patty, man, Lesley, man, you don't give up. And now you not just give up. You are one of the warriors in charge of humanity. And projects like this, what I love the project is that you didn't turn it into a race thing. There was all kind of, it didn't sound that it was beautiful presented. You included people from different backgrounds, different strength. And I want to tell you something you did in secret that was very special. I never experienced that like that before, where I was looking at something and the music and the words were switching from one to the other. In other words, the words became an accompaniment for the music, and the music became an accompaniment for the words. And I found my own rhythm. Actually, as I am reading what is there, I am reminding myself, no, I'm not coming in now because I'm hearing somebody play. So, secret, and then I hear the music. I pay attention to the music and I waited. So it created a different kind of relationship between, I never experienced that like that. Or I probably never pay attention that way, but there's something in there. That's when those two words coexist of inspiration between words and music.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lesley Mok.